Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all well. Tonight we will hear from DCP on the basic principles of urban design and take this information with us as we wade through the ULURP applications that are before us now and those pending in the future, and maybe even apply them to one that thinks it's getting through now. We shall see. So I have to thank DCP staff for putting this together. I think Mr. Winston Von Inkel is on. Winston, do you want to say a few words to open up the session?
I don't, but maybe Jonah does. Or Amy, who is your planner. They actually have more intelligent things to say usually than I do.
Your choice, my dear. Welcome you all. Thank you, Jonah, and thank you, Amy, and all the other DCP people that take time out of their day to come to this session. So here we go. Amy, take it away, please.
Sure, thank you. We're very happy to be here tonight. If you will remember, a month or two ago, we came to you with a Planning 101 presentation that introduced you all to how DCP sort of plans and the sort of things that we can do. So we would like to continue this type of a presentation with you all and have you all participate in the conversation and talk more about planning. And tonight we have Jesse, who's an urban designer in the Brooklyn office, presenting an Urban Design 101 presentation. I think we also have a bunch of other things that we can present on. And so we'd love to hear from you throughout this presentation and about future presentations. We'd love to continue coming out regularly and meeting with you all and hearing sort of your concerns about planning and your questions and walking you through all the different things that we do at DCP and hear more.
Okay.
Amy, I would just add that, this is part of our ongoing engagement, not just with M-Crown, but also the broader community. And so we're really excited to continue that engagement. And I know that we had discussed going back to discuss not just urban design, but also capital planning. And so we see this as part of an ongoing dialogue and yeah.
Thank you, Jonah. Okay, so we're seeing, Jesse, are you going to share your screen or?
Yes, I am. Thank you for that. I'm sorry, I'm having actually like a screen sharing issue real quick, so I want to make sure I have.
That's okay. While you're doing that, I just want to ask if people got a chance to look at the shorts, the 2 video shorts that you sent links for earlier today. They were kind of an opening refresher, so to speak. And I guess they're out there regularly on YouTube, just general pointers on the differences between urban design and urban planning. So we're working with the planners who also end up being designers, and it's a very fluid kind of function I saw from those video links that you provided, and I thank you for that.
Awesome, thank you. I will share my screen in a bit.
Okay.
Um,
So
and
those
just
little videos gave a clear understanding of the aspects of the public realm improvements that we want to see in M Crown. Now that we're headed for a new mayorality, we hope that we can bring M Crown back to the forefront.
yes, and as oh, someone saying something?
On you, Jesse.
Awesome. So my name is Jesse Hirakawa. I'm actually an urban designer at the Department of City Planning in the Brooklyn office. And yes, we have several colleagues with me today, as part of the broader outreach process. I know some of you know Winston and Winston Bonango, which is the director. And I think we have Alex Sommer here, who's deputy director. And I know there's other planners like Jonah and Amy that you're familiar with. And also, I believe Sagi Golan, which is my senior urban designer at the agency, with me. I think that's all the DCP people with us today. But with that said, yeah, thank you for having us on this special meeting to talk about urban design practice and what we do at the Department of City Planning. And I'm going to try to keep this as casual and not too formal as possible, even though we have this formal deck. But feel free if to use the chat to throw in questions. I can't see the chat as I'm sharing the screen, so maybe Ethel, if you see a good question pop up, you can maybe jump in and
Definitely
help
do that.
facilitate that. Yeah, or one of my colleagues could also easily respond to a question in the chat.
As long as the chat is directed at everyone, I should be able to see it. We do have our current applicants online with us and their main representative. We have Mr. Pariente here with us, and I think Richard LaBelle is also on the line. So I find that very interesting. I thank them for joining. So we'll have a shared experience. Go ahead, please.
Sounds good. Yeah. So yeah, we're very thrilled to have this, general introduction to the practice of urban design and how we view urban design at the Department of City Planning. And so, really quickly today, I want to start off by familiarizing you all with what is urban design and why it's important, and how we work on it in the practice at Department of City Planning. Also, we want to understand the urban designer's role at the Department of City Planning. And lastly, we'll go through the urban design principles. And, these are kind of guiding principles that we use that, mainly guide how we work at the agency. And so, first off, what is urban design, right? In a nutshell, urban designers, we focus on people and honestly how they interact with the public realm, right? And the public realm is made up of streets, it's made up of your buildings, it's made up of the parks, your plazas, and like all the spaces in between, right? Like whether it's infrastructure, spaces under an elevated rail, is it next to a waterfront, is it between the buildings, right? It's really the public realm is where we are interacting, like where we are living our spaces. Right, and so these concepts are actually summarized in an animation video that's part of a website that the agency launched earlier this month. This video, it's actually a video, but it was part of the link that I had sent to Ethel earlier, that she had just mentioned. Hopefully some of you were able to watch it. If not, you can visit this link and later and you can watch it as well. But we are going to go through parts of this, and this is kind of a new video, a new approach to how we're going to be talking about urban design. And something I liked about this video is actually towards the end, this scene that it's on it's really how it takes you through the view of a person and how a person goes through and looks at the city and how we approach urban design and while looking at buildings.
We can tell it's recent because you have the outdoor dining facility in the roadway.
Yeah, it's a pretty new video. Like the agency's pretty proud of it. And so it's just released. It's a whole interactive thing. It's really just trying to get engaging with different communities throughout to talk about urban design and its importance. But yeah, so really quickly, I want to back up a little bit more, right? So urban design really became part of the New York City planning, kind of in the late 1960s, right? And so is after years of discriminatory and pro-suburbanization policies. And I think at the time, Mayor Lindsay commissioned a report that basically said that design could make a difference in bringing investment and vitality back to the city. And one of the outcomes of this report was an establishment of an urban design group led by a few people, Jonathan Barnett, Jack Robertson, and Alex Cooper. And this group really pioneered the use of zoning and other policy instruments towards very specific design goals, such that provided more privately owned public space or saving historical Broadway areas or around Grand Central. Some of their ideas didn't really take off, but like the idea of closing Madison Avenue off to cars, but there were some larger ideas that were focused around design at the time. And as time has evolved, right, we wanted to make sure that the urban designers at city planning, we kind of came up with this mission that together, right, we like to think that together with all New Yorkers, we want to help shape a livable city by advocating for high quality design within the built environment. Right, and how to do that by having this vision that it's a city that is designed and built to contribute to the quality of life and well-being of all New Yorkers in every neighborhood. Right, it's very kind of bigger, broad topics. But how to do that, right? We want to make sure that we're influencing policy and advocate for good design. We want to make sure that we're thinking across scales, right? Different, whether it's small or big, different perspectives. We want to make sure that we're understanding, evaluating, and really communicating changes that happen within the environment, right, the public realm. We want to make sure we're keeping up with emerging trends, right, and best practices that are happening everywhere. And also we want to make sure that we're empowering communities and bridging the gap between policymaker in New York. It's like really right now, right, is talking about urban design and helping you all at the community board level to understand what the priorities are for urban design. Right, so and how do we do this, right? What is the role that we have, right? We working with planners and other agencies, right? We shape the public realm. We review projects that come to city planning with a lens with our urban design expertise. And sometimes we do that while reviewing applicant projects, which the land use committee and your board may be familiar with, right? When they come to your board, but back and forth with applicants, when they come to us, we want to make sure that we're agreeing on some type of common ground before it goes to public review, right? And sometimes this process can take a few weeks to a few years, depending on the scale of the project and the political and community support on the project. And for instance, this one there's a lot of discussion about this open space, and you could see that there's these diagrams here really where does this type of public realm happen, right? And another example is in Canton Flats, a little bit more south of you all. This was really a progression of, I think it was with HPD and the applicants. And
I'm sorry, Jesse, but at my age, the pictures are too small for me. If you could make them bigger, I think it would help me. I don't know about other people, but it would definitely help me.
Sure, I think I can zoom in a little bit right here.
Yeah, okay.
There we go.
That's much better. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Noted for next time. I'll make sure you take up bigger shots on the sides.
Okay.
But yeah, so this is kind of a progression of a project that went through our urban design office at the Brooklyn office, where you'll see in the top left, this was initially the design that had come through for the Canton Flats project, and through thinking about how to break up this big street wall. It was kind of this big massing on one side. How do we address the ground floor? It's only two colors, two different material types, right? Like looking at different types of principles. How can we kind of break down the materials to make it a little bit more acceptable when it, finally gets through the end? And, this evolution was really something that we had worked on with the architects to make sure, thinking in good urban design practices. I'm gonna zoom back out real quick. There we go. And what else do we do, right? We also work on rezonings and neighborhood studies, right? So the first one you saw was like a smaller project. This one is a little bit bigger, right? we're involved with, neighborhood studies and citywide rezonings. For instance, this one that you see here is the Gowanus neighborhood study that some of you may be familiar with. And we really worked on with, having an urban design and zoning framework for this neighborhood. And it was really tailored toward the uniqueness of the Gowanus Canal. And, kind of what you're seeing, these drawings that are on the top, is really having, a process that we went through to create a variety and flexibility in the building envelopes to allow the architects to shape their building, with enough flexibility, right? And creating these kind of envelopes where buildings can really respond to the context, right? By stepping down in certain areas or pushing height in certain areas. Really just, we're kind of massaging those zoning guideline and urban design guidelines so that the architects can be flexible within there. And in addition, that's one. And in addition, we also want to help create public realm kind of guidelines and suggestions, right? And, the public realm really, as we were saying earlier, areas next to the water, areas between the buildings, where the parks are, where the streets are, where the sidewalks are, right? Other ways we do this, right? We look at, special sites, whether they're, really small corner lots, really like triangle, small lots, and, we try to test out what's possible there, right? Using, different hand drawings and sketches, but we're really just trying to figure out what's possible at different sites. What else do? We create engagement strategies and tools, right? One of the engagement strategies is, what we're doing today, right? Is to have general conversations and introduce to you how we view certain topics, whether it's urban design, capital planning, zoning, right? Different topics. And as we were talking about earlier, there's a website that I had shared earlier, which was recently released to try to get to really help neighborhoods shape, urban design principles. Another thing, we really want to talk to people and engage with communities. And so in some cases, it's really creating specific guidelines, right? Once we hear all that, and it's adding a layer of design direction needed. And for this example, it was really working with NYCHA and how to help create different guidelines to help look at further development, right? Trying to push forward, right? We often work with civic or professional partners and really work with city and to just help advocate for better urban design. And this is kind of one we were working in kind of in the streets, and there was this called Parking Day where we, I guess before we took over open restaurants and parking spaces, but this was a couple years ago. I think this was in the Bronx area where we just really, we're taking over public realm areas and trying to how can we talk about good urban design. And so kind of, wrapping up all of those, and the lastly thing, the more fun part, I think, at the end is, we've created these urban design principles, right? Four urban design principles that really synthesize over a decade of experience of practicing urban design in the city. And the goal was to kind of put together a set of values that are important with the intent of bringing clarity to our conversations, with ourselves within the agency, with other agencies, with applicants, with architects, and also with communities like you all. And so sometimes, urban design or planning rules or jargon can be kind of complicated to understand. So we really wanted to have these 4 principles that are to help talk about different good urban design practices. And we're going to break down each one in the next few slides, right? And so the first one, good urban design reinforces a sense of place of a neighborhood, right? And so how we look at that is what we mean is like really taking stock of what makes your neighborhood a unique place, right? It's like almost taking inventory of what's on the site. Like, are there any landmarks? Are there any notable buildings that you can see from any standing points? Are there unique streets that you have, unique corridors? Are there specific retail corridors you like? Different cultures of the neighborhood that are, really special in your neighborhood.
It sounds like it's straight from Landmarks Preservation Commission's designation report.
Yeah, there's a lot of connection there.
Almost word for word. So I would hope that we can get into that. We can continue stepping through this. Thank you. Go ahead.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that. It was actually something that we had thought about too, as we were saying this, like, oh, your committee's very involved in that, so you're probably going to mention something like that.
Well, yeah, because when these historic districts went up, the ones that we're looking at here in New York City, most of them were in the late 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
So I just mentioned that because the interplay between design and planning, it goes back quite a bit, quite a ways in time. That's all I wanted to mention.
That's fine. And so, right, observing the neighborhood's characteristics, so that we really can help make informed decisions in the design process, right, for any suggestion that happens in the future, right, and really looking in, for example, this area along Atlantic Avenue, right, the zoning here, has, relatively remained static for a while, and, not minimal development has taken place in certain areas, like, for the example, right, there's places where there's been gas stations or automotive uses on Atlantic Avenue and Grand, and it's relatively, stayed there for the most part. In other spots, right, thinking about, how do we look at a sense of place, right, in a neighborhood? Are there areas, where you really, makes you want to like stop and pause, right? And are there areas is there a clear place to, where it can invite individuals to, rest and meet and just enjoy the area, right? And how urban design can provide that for people, right? For example, this one is, I think it's Marcy Plaza. I know it's not really in Community District 8, but maybe some of you are familiar with it. But, it is a plaza where people can, stop in the middle of certain areas. And so with that thought, hopefully maybe I can engage some of you that are in the meeting, but I want to invite you all to participate in this, right? In the first urban design principle, it reinforces a sense of place. Is there anywhere in your neighborhood that really makes you feel like a sense of place, right? A feature in your neighborhood that feels special. Maybe is there a unique building or a unique natural environment or a natural building environment? Um, you can feel free to unmute yourself or throw it in the chat.
I would have to mention Brower Park.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to the Brooklyn Children's Museum remaking their facade, there was a late 1800s entry to the museum, which led you to an underground space, which still exists, but now it's replaced by what we in the neighborhood call the Big Banana. I don't know if you know Brooklyn Children's Museum, a new facade, but that's one that comes to mind immediately. And then most of the neighborhood churches are very singular in their profiles. St. Gregory the Great, St. Bart's, etc.
Yeah, these are all like very iconic places that you're mentioning, right? Where it's really unique to your neighborhood. And I love that you're mentioning kind of the facade of a building, right? The materials that are on the building. That's actually definitely speaking to another good urban design. I think it's the third principle, but it definitely right. However, the material helps. It can really make you feel good, right? It really has a good sense of place when you're looking at it.
Well, one of my neighbors in Prospect Heights, Kathy Island, put in the chat that one of the special things about Community District 8 is the low-rise building height, so that you have a feeling of spaciousness. You can see the sky without leaning all the way back. So that's very important to us.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of natural, or maybe not natural, but one an access to it as the sky, right? Yeah.
Kathy points out that we're losing this quickly. So that spacious sky view is something that we treasure.
Definitely. Anyone else out there? I don't see a chat, or I don't know how many people are in this meeting, but anyone have a suggestion that makes you feel like you're in a sense of place, right? What makes your neighborhood special?
Yeah, we have about 29 people. I really say about 25 because some folks are on twice or 3 times. So it's a fairly good turnout.
I can move on. There's, 3
Yes,
more principals.
Can I ask that once we're done, if we get a copy of this for
Of
the
course.
office to have in post? Thank you.
Of course. All right, so the second principle that we like to go about, right? Good urban design supports ease of movement around the city and accessible to the public realm, right? Making sure that we feel safe, we feel comfortable, right? And that it's intuitive while walking around your neighborhood. We find that it's very important, right? It's meeting to everyone's needs, right? It's visible, welcoming public spaces. You have access to healthy food, you have access to neighborhood services, right? The open spaces are well maintained, a nice distribution of public and affordable housing, convenient access to public transit, right? It's really about that movement and accessibility as you're going through the public realm, right? And the public realm is like your sidewalks, right? The spaces that you have to move about. And so really when we start thinking about this, right, we have to look at, well, what exists in your neighborhood already? Like what is that public realm that exists currently in your neighborhood, right? And so, right, and really looking at existing assets on, that make your neighborhood destination and highlighting areas where the public realm could be improved to enhance connections is important. For example, Atlantic Avenue could act as a border between, 2 different neighborhoods, right, to the north and the south, because it's kind of a wide street, right? There's a truck route between, a lot of cars, traffic. Um, it's definitely one of the physical barriers between, right? And so, if we're really thinking about walkability, right, on being on the sidewalk of a public realm, it's like looking at different corridors on how they could be designed and shaped, right? When you're going between point A and point B, we really want to make it active and walkable, right? And this manifests by looking at the ground floor of buildings, right? And so when you're walking, around through your neighborhood, whether it's a tall building or a small building, you're really perceiving when you're looking at it, when you're looking at your exact public realm, what you're perceiving is, when you're not actually like looking up, when you're looking straight, you're perceiving the first 40 to 50 feet, right, above you, right? We don't have this 360 view, but and so that's something that we want to make sure is whatever's happening in that eye level, is contributing to a safe and inviting streetscape, right? And that's something that we tend to think about a lot, is what is in our peripheral vision zone. And so maybe maybe I can open up Google Maps, but it'd be interesting if another engagement section that, if anyone out there wants to jump in. But is there a street or a walkable area in your neighborhood that you really like, right? Maybe a place or a street or a sidewalk that makes you feel a little bit more welcome, or maybe you don't notice it. Is there somewhere that's easy to access, somewhere, a street that provides a lot of neighborhood services that you find yourself going to a lot? Really thinking about how you move through your neighborhood. Does anyone have a suggestion?
Jack Robinson, do you want to speak up? Are you there?
Maybe I can.
Yeah, I'm here. No, I was just mentioning the Putnam Triangle. That's really great for the senior center.
Putnam Triangle.
I know
No.
there's development going on around there. Or the Lowry Triangle as well. That's also a very nice place that people use to sit in the sun.
Mm-hmm. I'm just gonna throw a person down there so we can all see it.
Yeah, that other triangle. Yeah, it's great. It's very different than the Putnam Triangle, but it's a great place and people utilize it a lot, I think.
Mm-hmm. Where's Putnam Triangle actually? Exactly. Oh, up here. Yeah. The street was closed down, I believe, right? Or not closed, but
Yeah,
removed from
a
cars.
couple of years ago, yeah. And then they went through several iterations of developing that triangle. And then I believe there's some amount of development going on behind that, and I wonder what's going to happen with the triangle after that. But
Mhm.
there's a senior center right across the street, and especially during COVID, like they do, like every Friday night they would have jazz, and instead of doing it inside, they would do it outside in the triangle, and all the seniors would come out and they loved it. It was absolutely great. It's a great place for that use.
Mhm.
I just want to actually make a note of Jesse's diagram just a moment ago of, how you as a pedestrian perceive building that exactly, right? And the image on the right, the drawing that he shows on the right, and that's such a great place, Putnam Triangle, because it has restaurants and stores on the side that activate that space. You know, I think I agree with you. That's a great uh, place for the neighborhood.
Also at night, though, like the police do like harass kids that are hanging out there. I mean, they, yeah, it's kind of like a collection area for the police.
So now the photograph that you're showing, Jesse, goes to the point that Kathy Island was looking at earlier, and Sharon Wedderburn is also pointing out, when we have these long views, we so appreciate the view of the sky. You're in the diagram that Jesse's using, you're calling it peripheral vision.
Oh, this one. Mhm.
But yeah, you're calling it a peripheral vision zone. And so 50 degrees up or whatever. But for us folks living here in Brooklyn, having a sky view like that is refreshing and comforting and spiritually uplifting, that you can see that much of the sky instead of looking at concrete slabs of building walls. So if you have anything like that showing Eastern Parkway, as committee member Sharon Wedderburn is suggesting, where lots of people like to walk, you get that sky view that makes you feel healthily refreshed from being outdoors.
I would agree. Yeah, and what's interesting about, what makes Eastern Parkway very unique? Yes, I completely agree with having the view of the sky and the sun. I don't think it's only unique to Brooklyn, but I think we all could appreciate seeing sky, right, and sun and open space. So, but I think what makes Eastern Parkway unique is it's such a wide street, right? Like the distance between um, this street wall where buildings are and this street wall where buildings are is so wide. I think it's over 120 feet. I'm actually, maybe someone correct me, I don't know how the distance between Eastern Parkway is, but it's a
Not
pretty
only,
wide street.
Jesse, is it more than 120 feet, but buildings are required to set back 30 feet further on either side, which is your point exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's such a unique condition that we have it so wide, right? And yeah, Eastern Parkway is definitely a beautiful street. I love walking down this area as well, right? And the trees, right, and the landscape that's kind of contributing to the public realm, right? The urban design of this is it has a unique canopy that's going through, right? Whether when you're in the middle, I know where a car would be, but if a person were on the side here, right, you have the benefit of having a tree canopy above you as well, right? And like the uniqueness of this design and the landscape working together really makes it accessible and walkable, right? Like the elements of the trees, the buildings, the sidewalk, the materials, the shade. Yeah, I would agree. Whoever mentioned Eastern Parkway is definitely a good one. Yes.
Yeah. So now we have the darker view. If we look at the corner of 6th Avenue and Dean Street, which is a direction that's in the chat now, to look at that and see what that
6 and
experience is
Dean.
like.
I'm a little turned around right now. Hold on. Six and Dean. Dean is up
Yeah, see,
here.
it's north, right? North and
I have Dean
little, and now a little west.
west.
West, the other direction, to the left.
Yeah, towards
6, there we
the
go.
arena, towards the
There,
arena.
right there.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right.
6th Avenue and Dean, or 6th Avenue and Pacific.
Is this 6 and Dean right here?
I think so. So you would see you're losing that sky view. It's being chopped up and closed off. One of the darker views I have of our future is a sidewalk view from Blade Runner.
Yeah, so what's definitely different is, comparing Eastern Parkway and Dean and, Fourth, very different. Obviously, I think we all know that it's a very smaller scale, right? Dean and Six are smaller streets, right? I think only a one-way street for one of them. But yes, and I think, when speaking to walkability and accessibility, right, for the second design principle, right? How does it feel to walk along the space? How accessible is it?
If you do a 360-degree at this four-corner intersection, we can see what's coming. Okay.
Right. I mean, I would point out that, yes, the older buildings are attractive. The newer buildings are new. They're modern buildings, facade, and we can't see the sidewalk as clearly with the scaffolding up, bridging up. But I think one of the things that we look to is, to activate the sidewalk with, there we go, that's a better one, right? With ground floor stores, trees would be good to have here. I don't know why there are no trees.
Eventually, all those things would be there.
That's
But
right.
Yeah, where are the trees?
that
Yeah.
upward peripheral vision view of the sky will not be available to us going forward. So,
Yeah,
but that's some of that fact is driving most of the resistance that we're hearing and seeing from people who would be stuck with living near these newly proposed high rises.
So this is Peter Crisis. May I speak for a second, just in reference to the photo that's
Absolutely, Peter.
being shown? So actually, this is a really good. I mean, I think this intersection is a really good one for a bunch of reasons, and I think the view that was being referred to was looking up 6th Avenue northward at Dean, because what we're looking at is still an area that's zoned R6B to the right. So that's why there's sky visible. But I think what I wanted to point out about the sidewalks is to build on what, or to respond to what Winston von Engel said. So the sidewalks in this specific location are a great illustration of what the community board ought to be concerned about. When Atlantic Yards had a SEIS, they looked at pedestrian use on the Dean Street sidewalk. That's not 6th Avenue, it's the Dean Street sidewalk. And they said there was a significant adverse impact. And I can't remember how it's addressed, but didn't seem like it was being addressed in a very satisfactory way. Some of the intersections, like Carlton and Dean, which is just one block away, has been identified to have, is anticipated at certain times of the week to have a 13-minute delay. Now, sometimes these things are, in studies are not obviously.
Delay in what, Peter?
A delay, well, somebody's sitting in a car trying to get through past Carlton Avenue and Dean Street.
Okay,
may
so the
sit there
traffic is
forever.
paused for 13 minutes. Okay,
Right, and
thank you.
some people who, I would say that studies sometimes go in lots of different directions for lots of different reasons, but just using common sense, I mean, and personal experience, I think people who are in the community board have driven down Bergen Street and gotten stuck there know that that environment is not a pleasant one, because it's very often that the cars are built all the way out to Vanderbilt Avenue, and it's and the sidewalks aren't that great either when there's in this particular case public facility employees parked on them. But again, that's not why these sidewalks are not big enough. They're not big enough because the relationship of what was approved and built wasn't dealt with a public realm plan. Atlantic Yards was built as a state project, driven very much by what I would call the equivalent private applicant, and there was no city plan to address it. There was no broad city plan to address it. And so when we're looking at these individual applications coming through, that's my exact concern here too. So we're actually looking at a virtual, I think, you guys probably look at the population numbers and give a more accurate number, but aren't we between Atlantic Yards Pacific Park and what you're proposing on Atlantic Avenue coming pretty close to doubling the existing population of Prospect Heights? And when is the public realm plan going to be, when is that neighborhood-wide plan going to be done for us? Which, as you know, is both political and it's a political, it's where we need some leverage to achieve it.
Sure, and I thank you.
Questions. Let's get some answers in here.
Sure, and I appreciate you, Peter, raising the issue of sidewalks in relationship to buildings. And you're right. You're absolutely right. There's a trade-off, right, between building density and form and the use of the public realm. The public realm, in this instance, we're looking at one shot here, is a combination of sidewalks and roadbed, and the roadbed is used for private vehicle storage, freight, the UPS truck, a bike lane, and movement of vehicles. And so part of the public realm is talking about how we should be prioritizing that space. There's only two directions to go, right? When it's developed, you can build into the street, which is the public realm, or you can require setbacks on the buildings themselves so that the sidewalk is widened. So I think part of what, as we would talk about this through a public planning process, we would talk about how the neighborhood would like to prioritize the space to be developed. How wide the sidewalks should be, how much roadbed should be dedicated to movement of people in bikes, in pedestrians, or should it be dedicated to private vehicle storage? Should we have drop-off areas dedicated to UPS and FedEx and so on? And how much of the private lots should be dedicated to open space and sidewalk widenings? And I'm sure you're aware that as the developments along Atlantic Avenue have been moving forward with the proposals, they've all included sidewalk widenings on the private development side. So I think obviously that's private applications, but one of the reasons why we're here today is to talk about different aspects of the public realm and what we should be prioritizing moving forward.
Okay. We have. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Alex. We do have another comment in the chat that points out the Prospect Heights population would be nearly doubled by new development without a neighborhood-wide plan. It may even be doubled with that. But one of the City Environmental Quality Review technical points is, does the population increase substantially? And it gives numbers and whatnot. And as Peter was asking, what do you do when the environmental statement identifies a significant adverse impact? Why does that component of the plan proceed anyway? So these are some of the things we are exploring as we listen and learn from the group we have here tonight from DCP as experts. So we want to understand what it means to deal with a recognized significant adverse impact? And is that something that the community board as an entity, when enough of those significant adverse impacts accumulate, do we have a right to say no to the proposed project?
So if I could make a suggestion, Ms. Tice, can we, I think it's a very good and valid point, a good question. Let's give Jesse a chance to go
Yes,
through
absolutely.
the remainder of the presentation, and then we're happy to speak with
Okay.
you and learn more
Okay.
what your concerns are and to talk more about urban design.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I'll move on. But yeah, definitely all great topics that are being brought up, and this is just a focus on urban design and pertaining to environmental impacts. That's definitely something that we can add on to as another talking point for later for another engagement session.
Stewardship.
Yeah. So the third, there's 4 principles, right? So going on to the third one, right? So good urban design incorporates details, right, that ensure the quality, durability, stewardship, and maintenance of the area, right? So like what makes our streets comfortable are the details, right? Like working with Department of Transportation, HPD, the Parks Department, really, to ensure that the materials that are placed into the public space are durable and safe, right? That they stand the test of time, right? Same thing with affordable housing, right? HPD ensures that affordable housing is designed to last a long time, right? That the quality of the building, really is an attribute to the public realm of the area, right? Buildings have to be designed with, proper ventilation, proper transparency in windows, right? And it's really looking at, whether it's the small, I think Ethel, you talked about a facade, like, right, like that brick material, that's of a certain, I think it was a library, right? Like the aesthetics of that smaller detail, all the way to what type of bench, what type of chair should be placed, what kind of trees, right? Is it the larger trees, or even, to the scale of buildings, right? Like that type of detail is really important. Right. And so, speaking of the area that we've been all kind of looking at, something when we're talking about, specific details, right? Not necessarily talking about the height of something, but talking about the specific detail design, right? Like how is the ground floor of a building articulated, right? Whether it has an interesting design, is it what type of active ground floor use, is it a ground floor use that will be actively used often, right? Are there landscape requirements that provide an active treescape, right? And what kind of details that really help make this kind of a prominent corner or a prominent space along the sidewalk as you're walking. And so, and then lastly, the fourth one, right? The fourth, what makes a good design ensures that our city is comfortable, welcoming, and safe to all, right? It's a good safe space, right? We look at whether it's enhancing the quality of life, right? Making sure that it's, enhancing our public health, that it's inclusionary for everyone, it's really enjoyable for people as they're coming to these different public spaces, right? And when thinking about comfortability and welcoming and safe to all, right? It's really important to take measurements of these features, right? And a good example that we threw on here is the senior urban designer that's joined with me here today, Sagi. He actually went out and measured every sidewalk along Atlantic Avenue between, I think it was within this whole M Crown area, and he, because we were really wondering, is the width of a sidewalk really matters, right? Whether we're feeling comfortable or safe at all, right? I think we've all experienced a small sidewalk and you feel like there's not enough room, or maybe you don't notice because the sidewalk is wide, and so you feel safe on that wider sidewalk. This is just one of the examples that we looked at, like how do we ensure a comfortable and safe space for everyone, is really understanding what is built there right now. And so lastly, on this last principle, maybe another short engaging spot that we wanted to talk about was, in terms of, and I know we've talked a lot about, exposure to the sky and being able to look up, which is great. I think, focusing on the fourth principle of what makes you feel safe and what makes you feel comfortable, right? Really wanted to just show these two different versions along Atlantic Avenue, especially because it is along Atlantic Avenue and kind of a relatively close proximity, is like how the uses and what happens, along the sidewalk and the street can really change the vibe of it, right? And so there was kind of this last general conversation of, what do you see between them, right? And I know right off the bat, what I see, right, is like that use of that gas station, which, is important, but it's like, you really may not feel safe walking along that sidewalk along with the gas station, right? And so compared to walking along a street that has, a building with a ground floor active use and housing above, right, that feeling of feeling safe and comfortable really changes, right, depending on what's happening adjacent to the public realm. This is the last one. I don't know if some people want to shout out anything. Maybe they disagree with how this area feels safe to someone. But yeah, anyone has thoughts on this, but.
Thank you, Jesse. This has been very helpful. We don't do shout outs generally. We try to announce who we are and state a cogent question or comment and ask for the same back from our presenters. So at this point, I'd ask for additional questions. I do see another question in the chat from Ms. Islin asking what roles your sister agencies play in this design process, DOT, sanitation, parks. We know that DCP is top dog and you guys are the top cops and you call the shots, but the other city agencies can and should be offering their insights into the efficient services that they'll have to provide as we try to grow in a humanistic, comfortable way of living. So, yes.
This is Kathy Islin. May I speak for just a minute?
Yes, please.
I just want to, and thank you, Jesse, for your presentation, because it has a lot of great jumping off points, clearly, as you can see, because I've been writing in the chat, so thank you. But I do want to back up a little bit, which is, everybody has mentioned Eastern Parkway and what's happening on Atlantic Avenue. Clearly what can be built on Atlantic Avenue is, there's a new historic, I can't remember if it's a historic district, but there are now restrictions on what can be built on Eastern Parkway in certain places. And if we're being asked as a community board to consider independent applications, it's very hard to do that in absentia of what is the plan for Atlantic Avenue to make it as wonderful and livable and pleasant an experience as Eastern Parkway. It's as Ethel said, at some point, don't we have the right to say no until we have the answers to some of those questions? I don't think any of us are anti-development, but we're anti-development in a vacuum, or at least I can speak for myself. We haven't heard about what's planned, a cohesive plan, as Peter said, for what's going to happen to parts of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Kathy, do you mind if I just jump in for a second? So I want to just clarify something. Hi, and hi, Peter. Hi, everyone. I just want to clarify that, what you're saying, this is part of the reason why we are here. We're not here to discuss all of the answers and proposals for the public realm along Atlantic Avenue or within M Crown or the broader community. Today, we're really here first to discuss the principles of urban design, to kind of lay that foundation of, what are the key issues and topics that matter to you when, for not just the private applications, but more broadly. So we wanted to, start with that baseline. And then that can help us kind of shape the next conversation to get more in depth on the specific issues related to Atlantic Avenue and other streets. So I don't want to give you the impression that we're, withholding a lot. This is really the start of a conversation, and we're guided by your feedback and questions.
Thank you very much, Jonah Rogoff, and thank you, Kathy Island, for the give and take on these important issues as we try to move forward. We're on the crux of a new mayorality. And on the community board side, we have great expectations for good things from DCP. And I was hoping to hear some more detail on that aspect of the waiting that we've been doing. Everybody's been waiting. The private applicants were waiting until they got tired of waiting. And now we're waiting to see what can come once we have a new mayor who, during his tenure as borough president, the likely new mayor, we shall see in a couple months what's up. Either way it goes, we have to look at planning for very low income households to be housed. We need to address the homelessness issue that we have here. I don't expect any one or two or three private investors, private developers to handle the entire problem, but we want to look closely at what we are supporting in ways that can help be very helpful in addressing that problem. I don't know who on DCP wants to dive in on that, but I think that's one of the main problems that we need to address on both sides of this issue.
Guys, if I may, I think Jonah made a very good point, which is that we're here as part of to Ms. Iceland's question, right, about other city agencies, about the plan, what is being planned. This is part of this process, right? This is how we are planning. We've been engaged with you for a while now. We wanted to share with you what are important principles, how we look at a neighborhood. And in fact, it has influenced. Jesse showed the example of the sidewalk, the rendering for the sidewalk for 1045. I think it was 1045 Atlantic Avenue in CD3. Each of the private applications has been influenced by our work. Yes. In terms of urban design, by, you talk about viewing the sky. We asked each one of these applications to set back their building from the sidewalk to allow for more sidewalk, for example.
We heard about the 20-foot. We heard about the 20-foot sidewalks. We think that's great.
That's right, right. And that's actually a very important way that we influence and with you, because we hear you about the sky and everything else, how we look at the public realm, because we want it to be attractive, which means that it is safe and it creates value for all residents there. So just want to point out that this discussion on urban design is not frivolous. It is part of the planning process for MCrown.
I don't think anybody said this was a frivolous endeavor this past hour.
Or sort of like, it is part and parcel of the planning for the community.
Okay, this is good. Some of the things that we were seeing in the EAS, and I think we can take this time over the next, I think, week to take a deeper look at the two environmental assessment statements that have been issued. And keep in mind, as these processes go forward for each application, those statements can change because we take deeper looks and ask the proponents to take deeper looks at what's possible, what's beneficial, and we need to take close looks at that because these are humongous undertakings, and we would hope that environmentally, if they are going to go through, that they are environmentally sound and forward-looking. as far as stormwater runoff, energy utilization, etc. We want the healthy environment that is being promised to us in the new legislation that's coming down. And so all of that includes light, air, and no noise pollution, et cetera, using renewable energy sources and so on. So there's a lot of marrying that we have to do with what the applicants are asking for and what our needs are, and those needs don't change. The applications can change, but our needs as human beings and residents of this district, they don't change. They are what they are. Healthy environment. That's what we're looking for.
Ethel, I want to give you some credit as well and to the community, because I see many of the private applicants here on this conversation. And I think that's really valuable in and of itself, that we're all going to hear and they can hear directly from you and from us. So I think there's a lot of merit to just this discussion. And we're not, like I said, we're really trying to start with a baseline. But as Jesse showed, we wanted to convey certain principles, like and how to balance issues of how do you accommodate growth and housing, but ensure that there's an excellence as far as the public realm. So having, not just trees and wide sidewalks, but facades that, have varied materials. And so it encompasses many different things. But I think, a first start is really just all of us coming together. And so I just wanted to say that and thank the board.
You're very welcome, and thank you for putting this on. I hope we can get a copy to post and have other people who are missing tonight's presentation by Jesse Hirakawa look at it themselves, chew on it, ruminate, think about it, and come back and be ready. We have another meeting coming up, a special meeting, land use committee. Everybody's invited. The link will be posted on the CBA website, so everybody can come, and we'll talk about this again. And we'll have our land use committee meeting the first Thursday. Second Thursday, we will plan to do some business on these applications. By then, I would hope that no one will come to a full board meeting and say, well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't understand. We are trying to raise the level of understanding so that people know what the options are here. It's not a cram down.
So if I really quickly on that topic, right? We love that we were able to teach, I think a couple weeks ago, Amy did a short presentation on resources on mapping and looking at assets, and we came here with this urban design 101. And so I think I want to bring it back to really quick this slide, right? Potential upcoming topics too. Some of you are very well versed in zoning and affordability, and some of you really know how to do your population analysis. But maybe not everyone in your board fully understands that, right? In terms of environmental review, or different public engagement or different ULURP, when you're doing public review processes, right? And so we don't have to have an answer right now, but and you can speak to me or Amy or Jonah, whoever you usually speak to, Ethel. And if there are other topics that your board wants to learn more about, and it seems like environmental review is one of those topics, that is something that we can put together an environmental review kind of 101 thing, and to help equip you all with those tools to talk about it. Not just a few of you, but all of you, and help educate everyone on that. And don't need an answer now, but just something to think about for everyone on the board. If there's a topic that you would really prefer to talk about, we can put those kind of resources together for you all. And urban design was one that we was requested, so that's why we had done this today.
I thought we had another one coming up. Jonah, please remind me. I thought we had another one coming up in November.
Yeah, I need to circulate a date. I think we're looking at mid-November.
And that's
Um,
the zoning 101. I am going to circulate the asset study that was done when M-Crown was passed, not M-Crown, I'm sorry, MIH was passed. I'm going to circulate that later on this evening or in the morning. I just got it yesterday. And that's a heavy read, but at least we need to inform ourselves so that when we vote, we have a solid legal basis for whatever our vote turns out to be. Mr. Staten, you have your hand up? Both hands? Mr. Staten? Okay. So unless there's something else, let me see, there's another note in the chat here.
Yeah, there is a question by Kathy.
Okay. Process of possible evolution of Atlantic Avenue and other public spaces. We can begin with these conversations, but what happens next? And can we engage the applicants before they have approved plans to support these initiatives? Yes, we're engaging the applicants. Again, we have a special meeting next week. And then we have our land use committee meeting. And then we have the full board. So we're engaging the applicants at every step of the way. Who is asking that question? And I believe
Ms. Tyers?
the applicants are aware of the M-Crown vision. That's a matter of record. If they want to go along with that, we can cut all of this back and say, okay, they're willing to work within the M-Crown vision. I don't see that happening right now, but we have ways of dealing with that. And who was that?
Ms. Tyers,
Winston, go ahead.
Ms. Tyers, if I may, to Ms. Iceland's question, which I think it's an excellent question. She wanted to know about, the evolution of Atlantic. I'm looking at the chat, the evolution of Atlantic Avenue in public spaces and beginning the conversation, what happens next, what are the next steps, is what I hear you saying, right? I think, this urban design introduction is an introduction to talk about for you, and the reason Jesse showed these examples, like first, how we influence private applications or our own thinking in larger plans, but also to hear from you, like how your ideas for Atlantic Avenue, right? Jesse showed an example of Atlantic and Court. We, the city, just finished a landscape median on Atlantic Avenue, passed by Pennsylvania, between Pennsylvania Avenue and Conduit in East New York. It was done as part of the larger East New York rezoning and neighborhood plan. And, it has pedestrian safety islands. It has plantings in the middle of the street. The one thing that's still coming is going to be the new developments on either side that will then make that part of Atlantic Avenue, as Jesse said, rather than a divider, a seam that brings people together. And that work, that plan for Atlantic Avenue, we worked on with Community Board 5 and the local community, among them the Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation, by talking to them, going out with them. We asked them for their concerns. We knew, for example, from DOT that there were high incidents of crashes, pedestrians being injured, and cars crashing into each other. So that's how we, together with DOT, came up with the plan and the median for that part of Atlantic Avenue. And I think if I can actually pass on to Sagi, who is our senior urban designer, who's deeply concerned about the public realm.
Always continue
Go
to
ahead.
consume. No, I just want to add to Winston's. I think, Ethel, if you remember before the pandemic, you were in our office and we shared with you a deck that was the beginning of the process of us bouncing ideas of what focus areas for the public realm could be. Atlantic Avenue was next to the S shuttle. There was the Lowry, there was the Triangle. Like we kind of started like a soft kind of outreach about what we see as potential open space and public realm opportunities for improvement to start to solicit feedback, right? And that is part of what we're trying to do in terms of advancing the conversation. And we hope that we, after this presentation, after zoning one-on-one, we can go back to that conversation, because as we engage with agencies that are actually responsible for improving these spaces, like Department of Parks, Department of Transportation, and others, the MTA, if it touches on a structure, you know, we want to engage them early, so then as part of the whole neighborhood wide study, we can identify these improvements to be laid out as a shared vision with the community. We're just, you know, wrapping up Gowanus, that hopefully in very soon we'll have a series of improvements there that really was shaped by a process very similar to what we're having today. I think what the pandemic caused and the mayoral switch causes that we actually have a little bit more time to engage in these conversations, which is a good thing. So, you know, we think that these training sessions are actually a really good way to kind of engage in these conversation, get, you know, kind of common ground and understanding of what we look for. And yeah, we have to acknowledge that DCP does not control all these public elements necessarily, but we have really great conversations and ties with these agencies, and are willing to and are able to work together with these agencies and with you to identify and prioritize these improvements. And Atlantic Avenue is one major corridor that definitely needs TLC, but that's not the only one. And we hope to solicit these information from you in terms of your priorities.
Thank you, Sagi. I have a question for this situation that we're in. We have a property tax lien sale coming up. We're coming out of a pandemic when a lot of property owners couldn't afford to maintain their property, much less pay their taxes. So in a case where a property owner is walking away, let's just keep it to the M Crown area. If they're walking away, is there a way for the community board to ask for that abandoned property to be turned into a park, a public park, a pocket park? Mr. Winston.
You know, I think that's something as part of this process where we can identify needs, opportunities. You know, I mentioned East New York. It's something that we're very proud of. In East New York, we actually didn't increase the amount of open space or parks. Actually, we did a little bit. We looked actually at a street and we closed it, and it becomes park now. But we improved the parks that are there, right? So sometimes parks are old. There was one particular one that was just asphalt, and we, with the Parks Department and the community, through a community charrette, turned it into a track and field, a playground, a skating park, and I forget what else, but we made out of one asphalt ball field, we made 5 different uses out of it.
I like that. I like that.
Right. And so it's a way of thinking creatively about what space you have. At Callahan Kelly Park, there was actually that's where the A train is underneath at Broadway Junction Station. We actually recommended closing off of a street, and that's in the middle of the park, and adding it to the park. And that's actually going forward. So that's where we used a city asset, a street that wasn't really used. We closed it and added it to the parks, and it became it's becoming, because it's under construction now, an asset to the community. So there are different ways. I think you're on to the right track to think that, to think creatively about how we can use our limited public resources in the most efficient way.
One last question before we begin to close at 7:30. Is city planning insisting that these new developments use renewable energy sources?
So there are requirements in the building code. We don't control the building code at city planning, but the city as a whole has sustainability requirements. We have requirements for buildings now to post their energy efficiency, and we have requirements for buildings. And I actually think you should ask the applicants, particularly the architects, who are incredibly familiar with the building code and what the needs are of sustainability. I would point out that new construction is always more sustainable, more energy efficient than older buildings are. As you probably know from if you're living in an older building and drafty and old ways of heating or cooling these places. But yes, the city is absolutely dedicated to making buildings more sustainable, less energy.
Thank you very much. Okay, so this has been very helpful, very enlightening. And unless there are any other questions, I see Alex Summer has posted a link to City Line Park in East New York in the chat. Probably want to copy that to your browser and bookmark it for look-see later on. And you'll have that to look back on as we go forward. Thank you for that, Alex. And unless there's something else, I'm planning to ask for a motion to close the meeting. Hearing none, I move that we close the meeting and resume. I think we have something for the 27th, a special meeting on the two ULURP applications. I hope to see you all at that time. And it'll be on the community board's calendar of meetings. The link will be there, and I would want you all to join us. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, DCP. Thank you, both sets of applicants and the staff to the applicants. Appreciate you being here. Good to see you, all of you, Winston, Richard, everybody. Thank you for coming, and good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Ansel. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.